member of the sports industry, and it is also a local representation as well, because we have a Nike store over in the Galleria. So we can use that as an example of a sport organisation if you wanted to look at it for your assignment. But I'd encourage you to look at it on that particular shop rather than it as an international organisation. Okay? So you would need to look at it on a small scale rather than a large scale. Okay? That's just a little picture from their European headquarters that I visited 2 years ago with a group of students from North Arts College. One's here, Sean was on that trip. Okay? And this is just the front foyer as you walk in, and you can sort of see their products and what they've achieved. You can't see it in this picture, but as soon as you walk in, the 87 to 06, they're the years that the organisation, that's all I could get onto the photograph, but it extends further back as well. And they're just what they've done that year. So in 1988, can you see who this might be?
Michael Jordan.
Okay, so that was one of their major athletic signings that year. Okay? Alright, and then further on, if I'd been a better photographer, you could have seen some of the models that they've created with regards to their footwear, the latest editions for footwear and apparel. Okay? Just a few pointers that we picked up while we were there. The European headquarters is based in Hilversum, which is just outside Amsterdam. And they employ on that site 1,800 people. Okay, so they're a social entity, they employ people at that site. There's a little bit more female staff than there were male staff there at the time, and they are effectively their strategic headquarters, for Europe. And what they do there is that they design their products and their equipment and they test them there. Well, some of the things we noticed while we were there, do you remember, Sean, there was very poor access for disabled employees, but they had a very, very youth culture. A lot of the employees that were there were under the age of 35, and that there was a very strong youth culture. There were plenty of facilities in that building, that main headquarters for sport. There was a massive, great big sports hall, and there was a great big gym, and there was a dance studio as well. And they had some really interesting philosophies there. This is going to be relevant to you when you do your cultural bit later on in the module, because they had less access for non-able-bodied staff. There was a little bit more of a representation from the female community rather than the male community, so that will affect the culture within an organisation, and what they actually do there also impacts on the culture. Do you remember anything else from that trip?
They didn't work like 9 to 5. They worked whenever they wanted.
They worked exactly. They had a very flexible working culture. So if you worked for their marketing department, for example, you could work really flexibly. You could go in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. You could work from home in the morning and stay till 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock that night. How you worked was different to maybe a traditional 9 to 5, or if you work shifts in the UK. In the sports industry, something else I noticed while I was there was that they had pictures all around the building of Nike t-shirts with a swoosh on it, and employees were encouraged to wear the swoosh, take pride in the swoosh, and don't you dare turn up to work with an Adidas shirt on. Okay? So there was a very strong culture about being proud of the company, taking pride in what they actually promoted. Okay? That's something else which we find quite useful for your purposes, really. Okay. Now, from the perspective of change, if you've done any sort of reading around this case study, it is an interesting one because it started back in the 1950s, and Phil Knight worked with a guy who was an athletics coach, and they started to develop shoes for running. They developed the first waffle sole, which made it much more comfortable to run. So Phil Knight was the business brains behind the idea, but his athletics coach was a guy called Bob. This name's gone from me at the moment, but he designed the shoe, and Phil Knight sold it. And there's only 2 of them back in the 1950s, and they started off the business selling shoes at athletic events, at athletic meets, so race events, at colleges. So they identified their target market, identified the product very, very early on, and it was a very small sized business, only 2 of them, And it had very little task differentiation because all it involved was making a shoe and selling it. Now you look at what Nike does now, there's a little bit more involved than just making a shoe and selling it, isn't it? Okay. So by the 1960s, 1970s, they'd changed their name, they'd sourced different suppliers. They originally got sourced, they got the shoes made in Japan, and they changed the suppliers to be based in the USA. And by the end of the 1960s, they'd gone from employing just being a company of 2 people through to a company of 20. So they've changed sectoral size practically in 10 years. As the business grew, the culture changes, the structure changes. The more people you employ, the structure has to change. The business became more specialised as they developed products and shoes for other sports. And that meant that jobs became more defined. They were employing people to specialise in shoes for football, shoes for running, shoes for basketball. And as the business grows, becomes bigger, it therefore becomes more bureaucratic, it becomes more formalised, so the structure changed. And now, as you all are very well aware, it's an international business with 37 units across the world, with headquarters in Europe, America, Africa and Asia. Okay, and involved in all sorts of sports and all sorts of aspects of sport. They're also expanding their business, particularly in the USA, into training, developing a training program. You're all familiar with the concept of SAQ, speed, agility and quickness. Well, Nike have taken that concept, which is a product, which is a licensed idea, which is a patent attached to it in the UK. They've taken it and called it, in America, SPARK. Speed, power, agility, reaction and quickness. So they've taken the SAQ concept, renamed it and packaged it for the American market. So that's another aspect of their business that they're involved in as well. So just from the perspective of looking at how an organisation grows, it changes shape, it changes structure, it has changed scope in a very short period of time, really when you look at it. Okay? So those are your 5 key elements. Oh, where's it gone? And social entity hasn't come on. Where's it there? Social entity is your first key element. Involvement in industry, focus, activity system, and boundary. Okay? There are plenty of sports that Nike aren't involved in, but they've set their markets all out to be involved in sports that are popular and sports that will make them revenue. So, any organisation you're going to look at, one of the things you'll be asked to justify is, how does it make those elements? Okay, if you take a 5-minute break, come back. 5 minutes break.